I've had thousands of conversations. Fighters who've been to war inside the cage, scientists who've spent decades chasing truths hidden in the fabric of reality, philosophers who could bend your mind with a single sentence. But nothing shook me like this. It didn't happen in the middle of a podcast. It didn't happen under the bright lights. It happened in the quiet, lying in bed at 3 a.m, staring at the ceiling. That stillness where the noise of life dies down and you're left with the raw truth staring you in the face. How fragile all of this is. How close the edge really is. I used to think I understood life and death. I've talked about it for years. I've dived into psychedelics, meditation, extreme sports, chasing answers, pushing boundaries. But deep down, there was always this question I couldn't kill. What happens when it's over? Then I came across something that didn't just give me an opinion, it gave me certainty. It wasn't wrapped in self-help slogans or buried in vague metaphors. It was direct, unflinching, and it hit me harder than anything I've ever heard. That night changed the trajectory of my life. And by the time we're done here, you might not see life and death the same way either. For most of my life, I've been a seeker. Not just in the casual, I like to read interesting books kind of way. I mean, obsessively. I've chased answers across every possible landscape you can imagine. Psychedelics, meditation retreats, philosophy, seminars, long nights in smoky rooms with friends, dissecting the meaning of existence. I went deep into science, fascinated by the mechanics of the brain, the physics of the universe, the patterns hidden in nature. I studied religion from a distance, curious about how people find faith, how they build their moral compass, how they make peace with the fact that their time here is finite. I was always drawn to that core mystery, consciousness. What is it? Why do we get to experience this sliver of existence, this window between birth and death? And why does it feel like we're meant for something more than just survival? That question never left me alone. It followed me everywhere, in every conversation, in every quiet moment when the world went still. On the podcast, I've sat across from people at every extreme of belief. Monks who have renounced everything to live in silence, atheists who see the universe as a beautiful accident, priests who speak with unwavering conviction about salvation, scientists who believe we'll one day upload our minds into machines. Everyone had pieces of the puzzle, fascinating, beautiful pieces, but no one could hand me the whole picture. And I'll be honest, in between the searching, I was chasing highs. Physical highs from training and fighting. Intellectual highs from conversations that lit my brain on fire. Emotional highs from moments of connection. But no matter how high I got, the lows always came back. That sinking feeling after the adrenaline faded, after the applause ended, after the quiet crept back in. It was like standing on a shoreline, watching the tide roll in and out. I could touch something profound for a moment, but it would slip away just as fast. I started to wonder if maybe that was all life was. Moments of clarity surrounded by long stretches of uncertainty. Then, I stumbled into something I didn't expect. It wasn't part of some grand plan or lifelong interest. It was almost by accident. A conversation here, a video there, a book someone recommended offhand. But once I opened that door, I realized I was looking at a truth that didn't fade, didn't blur, didn't rely on my emotional state to make sense. That's when I came across Islam, and I didn't expect what happened next. It started almost casually. I wasn't setting out to study Islam. There was no, I'm going to dive deep into this faith moment. At first, it was just bits and pieces, a clip from a debate someone sent me, a conversation with a Muslim guest on the podcast, a few articles I stumbled across late at night. I'd read something here, watch a video there, no pressure, no expectations. But the more I looked, the harder it was to turn away. I expected the Qur'an to be like any other religious text I'd skimmed before, poetic in places, vague in others, maybe inspiring but open to endless interpretation. Instead, I found something else entirely. It was direct, unapologetic, structured. Every verse felt like it knew exactly what it was saying and exactly who it was talking to. There wasn't this sense of it trying to convince you, it was telling you the truth, whether you accepted it or not. Then I came across a verse that froze me. He who created death and life to test you as to which of you is best indeed, and he is the exalted in might, the forgiving. Qur'an 67-2. That one line stopped me in my tracks. I must have read it 5 times. The idea that life and death weren't random, weren't cruel accidents, weren't just nature doing its thing, but a deliberate creation, a test. And not a test of how much you could take or how much you could win, but of who you became in the process. Up until then, death had always been the big unknown in my mind. Sure, I talked about it, theorized about it, laughed in the face of it sometimes, but deep down it was a black hole. An endpoint you couldn't see past. The Qur'an flipped that completely. Death wasn't the end, it was a transition. And more than that, it was purposeful. There was a reason it was there, and a reason we were alive right now. That realization made me start paying attention to the people who actually lived by it. I began watching videos of Muslim communities, listening to their stories. The thing that struck me wasn't just their faith, but the way they carried themselves. There was discipline in their daily lives, praying at specific times no matter what, fasting even when it was inconvenient, holding themselves accountable for their actions. But there was also this deep sense of peace. They weren't just moving through life, they moved like they knew exactly where they were going. I'd see people in difficult situations, financially struggling, going through personal loss, but still smiling, still helping others, still certain that there was meaning in it all. And I'd catch myself thinking, if I believed what they believed, would I still be living like this? Would I still be chasing distractions, wasting time, avoiding the hard questions? It was unsettling, not in a bad way, but in that way when you realize the mirror's been in front of you the whole time and you're just now looking straight into it. My old perspective suddenly felt flimsy, like I'd been leaning on a wall made of paper. I didn't know it then, but those first casual encounters were the start of a crack in the foundation of how I saw the world, and once the crack was there, it was only going to get bigger. The first real wall I hit was the idea of submission to God. That word alone, submission, used to make me bristle. In my world, in the way I grew up thinking, submission was losing. It was giving up control. It was weakness. I'd spent my whole life building myself to be self-reliant, independent, in charge of my own path. So when I first heard that Islam literally means submission, my gut reaction was, nope, not for me. But here's the thing. The more I learned, the more that definition started to shift. Submission in this sense wasn't about losing power. It was about aligning with something far greater than yourself. It was like in jiu-jitsu, when you're new, you fight every position, muscle through every move, thinking that brute force will win. But the deeper you go, the more you realize that the art is in yielding to truth. You stop wasting energy fighting reality, and instead you flow with it. And when you do that, you don't get weaker, you get unstoppable. That's when it hit me. Real freedom isn't doing whatever you want. That's just slavery to your impulses, to your worst habits, to the parts of yourself that will happily drag you into the ground. Real freedom is being free from those destructive desires. And the structure I saw in Islam, the daily prayers, the fasting, the moral boundaries, it wasn't about restriction. It was training the soul the same way we train the body. I remember sitting down with a guy, a Muslim, who had a past that would make your head spin. Drugs, violence, the kind of chaos that swallows people whole. And yet here he was, calm, centered, with this quiet strength in his voice. I asked him what changed. He didn't go into a long philosophical rant. He just said, I realized I'm going to meet God one day, and I don't want to meet him with blood on my hands and lies in my heart. That was a gut punch, because I realized that in my old framework, accountability was mostly external. You answer to the law, to society, maybe to your own conscience when you feel guilty enough. But in Islam, accountability is constant. It's not just for what you do, but why you do it. Your intentions matter as much as your actions. That thought gnawed at me. How many times had I done something that looked good on the outside, but was driven by ego, by wanting to be admired, by chasing approval? In the world I was used to, as long as the end result was positive, no one questioned it. But in this way of thinking, even the best-looking action could be worthless or worse if the heart behind it was corrupt. I couldn't hide behind good deeds done for the wrong reasons. That stripped away the comfortable buffer I'd been living with. Suddenly, it wasn't about how I looked to the world. It was about who I really was when no one else was watching. And I'll be honest, that's when things got real for me. It's one thing to read ideas on a page, nod along, and go back to life as usual. It's another thing to have those ideas pull the rug out from under the way you've been living and force you to ask yourself if you're ready to face the truth without excuses. That's where I found myself standing right on that line, and I knew there was no going back to the old way of thinking. I didn't just want to think about these ideas anymore. I wanted to test them. So I started small. I cut out drinking just to see what would happen. Not forever, not with some grand declaration, just a trial run. I wanted to know if my mind felt different when it wasn't dulled, when my evenings didn't end in that warm haze that, if I was honest, always left me a little emptier the next morning. And yeah, it was uncomfortable at first, not because I missed the taste, but because I had to sit with myself, no buffer, no blur. Then I tried fasting. Not the trendy intermittent fasting I'd done before, but the real deal. Sunrise to sunset, nothing passing my lips. The first day, my body fought it, my ego fought it harder. Every part of me wanted to quit, to justify breaking it. But when sunset came and I finally drank that first sip of water, it wasn't just physical relief. It was the realization that I could say no to myself and survive, that I didn't have to obey every craving the moment it showed up. Somewhere along the way, I started listening to the adhan, the call to prayer. I didn't understand the words at first, but I could feel them. There's something about that sound. It's not just music, it's not just words, it's a reminder. 5 times a day, everything stops, and you're called back to what matters. I'd be in the middle of my day, scrolling or working out or overthinking something, and I'd imagine what it would be like to drop it all, just to realign with your purpose. The strange thing was, the more I experimented, the more I noticed something about ordinary Muslims I'd meet or see. They weren't perfect, they had struggles, jobs they didn't always love, bills to pay, personal battles to fight, but there was a kind of calm under it all. They weren't immune to hardship, but hardship didn't own them. That's when I kept hearing this Arabic word, yaqeen, certainty. Not just belief, not just hope, certainty. And I realized that was the missing piece I'd been chasing for years. You can have all the knowledge, all the experiences, but if you don't have certainty, you're still adrift. One night around 2 in the morning, I was reading and I came across this line. Indeed, with hardship comes ease. Qur'an, 94-6. It was like it was speaking straight to me. Not some vague fortune cookie encouragement, but a promise. Not after hardship comes ease, but with it. That blew me away, because it meant you don't have to wait for life to get better to find peace. You can carry it through the storm. And the more I read, the more I realize Islam didn't just talk about the afterlife in abstract terms. It laid it out, what happens after death, what will be asked, what matters in that moment. And instead of making me anxious, it sharpened how I saw the present. Every choice became part of something bigger. Every action wasn't just for today. It was for the day when nothing else will matter except the truth you bring with you. That's when I knew I wasn't just studying anymore. I was changing. The first time I stepped into a mosque, I didn't tell anyone. No cameras, no announcement, just me quietly walking through the doors, not sure what I was even looking for. I expected it to feel foreign, maybe even awkward. But instead, the first thing I felt was warmth. People smiled, nodded, welcomed me without the slightest sense of judgment. No one cared about my status, my past, or the fact that I didn't look like I belonged. It wasn't a religion in that moment, it was a family. I sat in the back, just watching the lines of people, praying in unison, shoulder to shoulder, no hierarchy, no separation between rich and poor, famous or unknown. Just human beings turning to God together. That image stayed with me. It stripped away a lot of the illusions I'd built my identity on. Over the weeks that followed, I heard stories from people in that community. Reverts who had left behind everything they knew because they found truth here. Refugees who had lost homes, family, entire worlds, yet somehow radiated gratitude. Scholars who could speak for hours about the depth of a single verse, but would still sweep the floor of the mosque without thinking twice. It humbled me. I'd spent years interviewing the smartest people I could find, chasing after greatness in every form. But here were people who had something more powerful than all of that: humility. A strength that didn't come from dominating the world, but from mastering themselves. Then came Ramadan. I'd fasted before, but this was different. This wasn't a health hack or a mental challenge. It was spiritual discipline. The first few days were brutal. The hunger wasn't the hardest part. It was the awareness. With no food, no drink, no distractions, you start noticing every habit, every thought, every flaw. You can't hide from yourself. And somewhere in that struggle, the fog started to clear. I began to understand why Muslims love this month. It's not about deprivation. It's about purification. Your senses sharpen. Your intentions sharpen. You start realizing how much of your life is cluttered with things that don't matter. It hit me one night after breaking fast with a group at the mosque. Sitting on the floor, sharing dates and water with people who had so little yet gave so much, I saw it. This wasn't just a religion giving me knowledge. It was holding up a mirror. And what I saw in that reflection was not always comfortable. I saw arrogance, the subtle kind that hides behind confidence. I saw years wasted chasing things that fed my ego but starved my soul. I saw selfishness, moments where I could have helped but didn't, where I chose comfort over compassion. That's when the shift happened. For most of my life, success had been the measure. Numbers, followers, accomplishments, wins. But now sincerity started to matter more. Not just what I was doing, but why. Not just how loud the applause was, but whether I could stand before God one day and say, I meant every word, I meant every action. It's a dangerous thing when you start measuring life that way. Dangerous in the sense that you can't go back. Once you see your reflection clearly, the old games stop working, the mask doesn't fit anymore. And the more I leaned into this new way of seeing, the more I realized this wasn't just a phase, this was a transformation. It happened on a quiet morning. No grand event, no audience, just me, sitting alone, thinking about everything I'd seen, heard, and felt over the past months. I wasn't trying to force anything, but the words of the Shahada, the testimony of faith, kept rising in my chest. It was like they'd been forming there for a long time, and now they were ready to come out. Before they ever left my lips, I knew they were already etched into my heart. I reached out to the imam, and we found a corner of the mosque away from the bustle, a place where the air felt still, almost sacred. He spoke to me gently, asking if I truly understood what I was about to declare. There was no pressure, no ceremony for show, only a calm certainty settling over me. And there, in that quiet space, I said the words that had been echoing inside me. Ashhadu anna la ilaha illa Allah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadur Rasul Allah. I bear witness that there is no God but Allah, and I bear witness that Muhammad is the messenger of Allah. There wasn't a thunderclap or some cinematic moment. What came was peace, deep, quiet, undeniable. I didn't feel like I'd become a new person. I felt like I'd finally uncovered the real me that had been buried under years of noise. When I stepped out, the brothers in the mosque gathered around. Some of them had tears in their eyes. They hugged me, prayed for me, and welcomed me not just as a friend, but as family. In that moment, I understood this wasn't the end of a journey. It was the beginning of one that would carry me far beyond this life. Taking the Shahada wasn't a finish line. It was the starting point of a lifelong path. I knew from that day forward that Islam wasn't something I could just talk about. It had to be something I lived. Not by winning debates or proving points, but by showing it in kindness, in honesty, in mercy. Now every day feels more grounded. My choices aren't random anymore. They're tied to something bigger. I wake up with purpose. I still face challenges. I still make mistakes, but I face them differently, with patience, with trust, with the awareness that this life is temporary. Death doesn't hang over me like a shadow anymore. It's still a reality, but it's not a fear. It's a reminder to live well, to live sincerely, to prepare for what comes next. And here's the thing, if Islam can change how you see death, it will change how you live. That's exactly what happened to me. It turned life from a race I was trying to win into a journey I'm honored to walk, one step, one prayer, one breath at a time.